My name is Glenda Moore, and my first family connection to the Ozarks was with my grandmother. Her name was Winnie Tomlinson. She was born in 1898 as the youngest of a family of 5 children. Her mother was Eudora Shannon from Ireland. Her father was William Randolph Tomlinson, probably from Wales. They might have been second generation immigrants, I'm not sure. And they lived in Perkins, Oklahoma. They had gotten 80 acres on one of the land runs there. Well, when she was 2 years old, this is 1900, her mother died, probably in childbirth, at 39 years old, which was not uncommon in those days. And the father, took his 5 children, aged 2 to 14, and sent them to live with his sisters, who lived in Grandview, Arkansas. Grandview is a small town between Eureka Springs and Berryville. On and they kept those children for 6 months while their brother gathered himself together, and they wanted to adopt my grandmother at 2. They had a formal portrait made of her in a studio in Berryville, and I have that portrait. It's a large, beautiful black and white portrait of a little 2-year-old girl in a beautiful, almost like a christening gown with flowers. So he did not give up his children. He took them back after 6 months, um, and they stayed together as a family. He didn't even make his oldest child at 14, Audrey, leave school. He pinned my grandmother up in a little playpen while he was a mechanic. He would check on her every now and then. He kept them all together, and my grandmother stayed in touch with her aunts all through her life. So I was not aware of that uh, when I first came to Eureka Springs, and I'll tell that story later. But my grandmother had much of that Ozark cultural history within her family as an immigrant family in Oklahoma. She ended up marrying at 16 to my grandfather, William uh, Jennings Bryan Johnson, and they had 3 children. They were small ranchers. They had 300 acres in Oklahoma, and she grew all their food, canned it. She was a master quilter. They bought coffee, salt, sugar, and flour. Basically, they grew everything else, and she made an art of that kind of life. She made an art form of being a homemaker. Her canned goods were all beautifully done. People often canned a jar of green beans, for instance, or peaches just for the county fair, just to enter into the county fair. But she would go down to her root cellar and pick any of the jars. They were all beautifully arranged, and she would win blue ribbons at the fair, including a blue ribbon at the state fair with her one of her quilts. And I have that quilt today. It's a double wedding ring with mostly yellows. She had a beautiful sense of artistry and color and the way she brought things together. It is hand pieced. It is hand quilted. Every stitch of it is hers. It's an absolutely stunning quilt. So that artistry and that ability to make a good life out of very little materially was something she epitomized. And her gardens were beautiful, even later in life. She loved roses, were her favorite flowers, but there she was in mid Oklahoma. It was quite dry. She had a shallow well. She had limited usage of water, limited amount of water. So she let herself have 6 rose bushes around the edges of the house that she hand carried water to. And she let herself go with an iris garden. She had about a 1/4 acre of iris. Each year she would treat herself to the um, Dykes Medal winner, which sometimes were $25. They're very expensive, beautiful hybridized iris. And that garden was absolutely stunning. Rainbow colors, stepping stones in between. So I first fell in love with gardening and plants and handwork and homemaking just from seeing her. She was an inspiration. I did not learn technique from her, but just the memory of her work. Um, Inspired me. She died when I was 18 at 70 years old of cancer when I was a senior in high school. And my mother, her youngest child, was a city girl who unfortunately had been raised in the country and couldn't wait to get back to the city. So that is my story of my grandmother, Winnie Tomlinson Johnson.